Silence.
Just trying to figure out the room.
It's fair enough. It's going to be like this, isn't it? Because it's a bit weird, because we're obviously in like a weird abstract space in the cloud.
I think that just having even that basic interest in creating something that's even remotely relatable is enough of a foundation to do something kind of worthwhile.
I am a storyteller, and I am very interested in storytelling traditions particularly. And I know that there's a Welsh tradition of oral stories that goes way back. And we have a whole lot of that here as well. So I think something that Charlotte and I briefly touched upon was in the ways in which stories are told.
Did you hear that the world is ending in 72 hours? How will you get your new water drinking videos? Will there be any left? Act quick to quench your worries with Water 123.
It's interesting just to hear how we've all got these different ideas, and like Jacob said, having that abstract approach maybe, and in that abstractness finding something exciting within it. So
it's not a linear project. This is philosophy that I have for the organization and as a person. A lot of people are doing a lot of things in silos, which is great, but it's also not great. I think what you can do and achieve maximum impact is when you join up multiple people together with similar interests. Let's try and reach out on art forms and geographies that haven't been activated to drive one common agenda. And I think that's where Intercut Labs is.
Maybe like COVID is quite an interesting period of time where it's like, it feels like the world has shrunk in terms of its offering, but maybe actually we've just become kind of hyper-focused, and actually adults are in on that too, yeah. Right? You know, those traditional stories or those classical stories with school and not maybe having a nice time, but when you come to all this stuff as an adult, you just have a totally different perception. And being with people from across the other side of the world in India, it brings out this really nice excitement of learning about this world, because you're talking about it with people who have never been exposed to it perhaps, and then they light up and go, wow, that's really fascinating. And by default, the person talking about this stuff also relives that fascination and that curiosity.
Have you ever picked up a stone on a walk with a friend in a new place you visited?
I think going into this lab, I had little to no clue of what was actually going to happen. The most important thing was everyone's perspective towards this. You know, everyone was really free about it. And you know, the way they talked about art, and even the small little like activities in the beginning of each lab session, right? Even those kind of, you know, stream of consciousness kind of activities, they kind of stimulated me, even in terms of like making my own music.
My background, technically my work is in like a lot of orchestral music and contemporary classical music, but you know, I grew up as a guitarist and played as a guitarist for years, and I have the equipment to record something effectively in that way. And I think that's going to be probably the kind of way in to a lot of the construction of the musical material for this. That's where I think I can kind of bring to it.
In the Mabinogion story, I really like this story of Blood to It, who is a girl made of flour. That stone is still there, like it's believed, so it has a hole in it. And so I was very interested to use that stone to the missing part of the stone, and somehow it lands up in India.
The kind of play that was emerging as we were working, and I think that's been characteristic of the last couple of months. There's been a lot of playing, a lot of throwing things, a lot of like receiving other people's work, responding to it, trying to figure it out, watching, you know. And I think there's something also about generating material that's really rewarding as an artist.
Or throughout this project, I've kind of imagined a virtual rehearsal room, and at the beginning of the sessions, there I am with a key opening up the door and welcoming everybody and telling them where the coffee is and where the fire exits are. And in some ways then just sort of enabling them to run a creative session between them and learn together and chit chat together like they would do in a normal room. I've kind of tried to imagine that what that room would look like if we were all together in person.
So it becomes really interesting to see what stories speak to artists today, in what way. What is the argument they wish to make? So I asked them to look at the stories that came up. I remember, and it was fun because, say, the Welsh musician shared a very interesting story, which again had interesting tinges of not just the culture and history, but the religion as well, and how people treat that, how they react to it, what they're willing to challenge, and what they want to treat with respect. The same way we want things to be treated with respect in our culture. How the artists were navigating that was very interesting to me when you look for an argument.
The process was not so centralized. It was up to the artists to decide how they want to work together, what kind of approach they want to take. I found that quite interesting to observe, to see how each artist expressed themselves, decided when they wanted to collaborate and when not, because there are a lot of portions of this project where the artist takes influences from the others, even their Welsh Indian partners, but they don't necessarily create the content together. They create it independently. So I found that very interesting, that it became this collaboration, but also very expressive of individual abilities.
I don't necessarily think that one takes precedence over the other, because I think everything has kind of come in together. I think the two stories that Jigmeth and Gareth have been looking at have also come out of discussions that we've had on sort of the maybe the mythical or things from other world, or if this should happen, this what will happen, those kind of conversations that we've been looking at, or looking at nature, looking at water, mountains, air, wind, looking at the sort of elements and all that. So I think it was only natural that how culture or how oral literature, even in different parts of the world, can still sort of come together on several different themes and levels.
We see a literature person penning her thoughts visually through painting. We see a music composer who's dabbling with comedy and acting through compositions. So what's happened is they've internalized the concept of research, and they've pushed their own boundaries to realize that hey, I have another side. I'd like to explore that and bring that to the table for Intercut Labs.